Steve Harvey has seen countless moments in his life, from global stages to intimate conversations with people of every background imaginable. But nothing struck him as deeply as the moment he watched Muslims pray for the very first time. The voiceover begins in a firm, grounded tone. Steve Harvey, a man known for his humor, confidence, and charisma, suddenly went quiet. Not because he lacked words, but because what he was witnessing wasn't just a ritual. It was discipline. It was spiritual alignment, something deeper than anything he had ever seen before. As he watched people standing shoulder to shoulder, focused in one direction, leaving behind their distractions, he felt a strange mixture of peace and curiosity, like he was witnessing something divine. Normally, Steve analyzes everything through jokes, conversation, and commentary. But this moment felt sacred. It wasn't a performance, not a show, not for applause. It was an act of humility, a private connection between the individual and their creator. When the imam's voice filled the room and everyone bowed together, Steve felt his heartbeat slow down. He saw a community moving as one, with rhythm, balance, and sincerity, all without ego, competition, or desire for recognition. The voiceover emphasizes, for the first time, Steve Harvey witnessed unity and clarity that resets a person from the inside. When worshippers lowered themselves into sujud, when their foreheads touched the ground, Steve felt something shift. He realized this wasn't just a posture, it was humility, the kind that strips away pride and brings a person face to face with their truth. Steve had always believed greatness came from confidence and charisma, but this moment taught him a new kind of greatness, the greatness of surrender. Knowing when to bow, when to let go, when to recognize that a higher power shapes your path, every movement, every transition, every word, calm, deliberate, and filled with peace. He realized this prayer wasn't just about religion, it was emotional grounding, mental clarity, and spiritual training, all happening at once. For a man surrounded by pressure, cameras, and chaos, Steve suddenly found himself in a space where peace wasn't forced. It was natural. As the prayer ended, people rose with calmness and greeted one another with warmth. Steve sensed something rare, a tranquil energy that healed the atmosphere itself. He thought, while I've spent years chasing balance through success, these people find it through surrender, 5 times a day. The narration sharpens. This wasn't entertainment. It was education. A silent lesson, teaching through sincerity, unity, and discipline. Steve realized this practice didn't just build worshipers. It built stronger human beings, calmer hearts, and clearer minds. He had attended seminars, retreats, and therapy, but none gave him what he just witnessed. Because true peace doesn't come from perfect circumstances, it comes from spiritual consistency. Achievements, awards, fame, all felt small next to that quiet connection between a human and their creator. When Steve walked outside afterward, the world felt different, softer, quieter. He noticed how people pause life itself for worship, to breathe, to remember God, and it struck him. In a world full of noise, this silence carries the most power. He reflected on how they washed before prayer, not as routine, but with intention, as if cleansing body and soul together. No cameras, no performance, just sincerity. That humility, when foreheads touched the ground, stayed in his mind. He had seen powerful people, but never such willing surrender. No hierarchy, no pride, just equality before God. It moved him deeply, because in that room status disappeared. Everyone stood equal, united in faith. He realized Muslims didn't pray to impress anyone. They prayed to anchor themselves, to reset their hearts and minds. The peace on their faces wasn't accidental. It was earned through discipline, devotion, and consistency. Steve thought about his own life, the endless grind, deadlines, and noise. He realized he'd been living without pauses, without stillness. But these people stopped 5 times a day to reconnect, reflect, and realign. That contrast hit him hard. He had built a career on being present for audiences, but he had forgotten to be present for himself. As he continued thinking, he saw children praying beside their parents, learning humility through action. He saw women praying with strength and grace, families united in peace. He realized this wasn't just a religious act. It was a culture of spiritual balance, shaping hearts from childhood to adulthood, and that made him emotional, because he understood how different life could be if everyone learned to pause like that. Steve reflected on his own belief in God, realizing he had prayed occasionally, but never as a rhythm, never as a lifestyle. Now he understood. Inner peace isn't something you chase. It's something you cultivate. Watching Muslims pray showed him exactly how. He walked away not as a celebrity, not as a comedian, but as a man humbled by truth. He learned that real peace doesn't live in applause, or fame, or noise. It lives in sincerity, humility, and connection to the Creator. And as he carried that lesson with him, Steve Harvey knew this was a moment he would never forget. Because sometimes the deepest lessons are not spoken. They are witnessed in silence.